Being such an experienced player, and I've had difficulties with her playing against her before, so I'm happy that I'm taking my advantage.
Change the pace off your own racket. Get a drop shot to fall in. Looking for another break of serve to close this out.
An explosion has rocked the ASB Classic in Auckland, and what was supposed to be a celebration of world-class tennis has turned into one of the most shocking controversies of the season. Accusations, anger, and a brutal verbal exchange have hijacked the spotlight, transforming a routine tournament day into full-blown tennis warfare. This is no longer just about forehands and backhands. This is about integrity, reputation, and a young star being thrown into the eye of a storm that could define her career. Before we talk about scorelines or semifinals, we need to unpack the bombshell that detonated behind closed doors and then echoed across the tennis world within minutes. If you're watching this unfold, make sure you stay locked in, hit subscribe, and turn on notifications, because this story is developing fast and the fallout is only just beginning. According to multiple eyewitness accounts, the chaos began in the press room just hours after a dramatic singles match. Croatian veteran Donna Vekić, a player known for her blunt honesty and emotional intensity, stunned journalists when she publicly accused 20-year-old Filipino rising star Alex Ella of using unknown substances to reduce fatigue during matches. Let that sink in. Unknown substances. Fatigue reduction. In professional tennis, those words are radioactive. Careers have ended over whispers far quieter than this. Vekić didn't hedge her language or soften her tone. She reportedly spoke with visible frustration, stating that she would rather lose matches than win by compromising her integrity. She went further, calling Ella's performance unprofessional and fundamentally dishonest. This wasn't a vague insinuation or a carefully worded concern. It was a direct public accusation delivered in front of cameras, microphones, and reporters from around the world. In seconds, a press conference that should have been routine transformed into a courtroom, with Ella's character placed on trial without evidence, without warning, and without mercy. The room reportedly fell silent as journalists processed what they had just heard. This wasn't just trash talk. This was a nuclear allegation aimed at one of the tour's brightest young talents. What made the moment even more volatile was the timing. Ella had just secured one of the biggest wins of her career, a breakthrough victory that should have been the headline of the day. Instead, her achievement was instantly overshadowed by scandal. The pressure, the exhaustion, and the emotional whiplash created a perfect storm. And then came the moment nobody expected. Alex Ella, a product of elite training environments where discipline and composure are drilled relentlessly, did something completely human. She snapped. Cameras captured the exact shift in her expression, the instant her face hardened and her posture changed. She didn't scream. She didn't storm out. She didn't lose control in a way that could be dismissed as childish. Instead, she leaned toward the microphone, locked her gaze forward, and delivered a response so sharp it felt like the temperature in the room dropped. A 16-word comeback. Short. Surgical. Devastating. While the precise wording is still being debated by insiders and lip-reading sleuths online, the meaning was unmistakable. Ella essentially turned the accusation back on Vekić, implying that bitterness and insecurity were fueling the attack rather than facts. It was a verbal uppercut that didn't just defend her name, it attacked the credibility of her accuser. In that moment, the narrative flipped. The young player who had been painted as a suspect suddenly looked like the one standing her ground, while the veteran began to look rattled. Journalists reportedly sat frozen, unsure how to react. The silence said everything. But Ella wasn't finished. According to several sources present in the room, she followed that brutal one-liner with a move so bold it stunned everyone. She challenged anyone questioning her integrity to produce evidence immediately. Then she escalated even further. She reportedly offered to undergo voluntary drug testing on the spot, without notice, without preparation, right there in front of everyone. That offer alone sent shockwaves through the press room. Players who have something to hide do not make that kind of offer publicly. It was a power play, a declaration that she had absolute confidence in her body and her professionalism. Suddenly, the burden shifted. The pressure was no longer on Ella to defend herself. It was on Vekić and anyone backing her claims to prove them. And here's the crucial context that makes this entire situation even more explosive. Ella's on-court performance that day was nothing short of extraordinary. Before the press room erupted, she had delivered one of the most convincing victories of her young career, booking her place in the semi-finals of the ASB Classic. She didn't scrape by. She didn't rely on luck. She dismantled an opponent who had beaten her twice before and had long been considered her kryptonite. From the opening games, it was clear something had changed. The match began with both players trading breaks, testing patterns, and probing for weaknesses. But as the first set unfolded, Ella's improvements became impossible to ignore. Her left-handed serve created angles that stretched her opponent wide, pulling her off the court and opening space for clean winners. Her movement was sharper, her decision-making faster. When rallies extended, Ella stayed patient, waiting for the right ball before striking. She took the first set 6-3, and with every game, her confidence visibly grew. The second set was where Ella truly announced herself as a serious threat. Instead of easing off, she raised her level. She broke early, asserted control, and refused to let momentum slip. Her opponent, a seasoned fighter with years of experience, tried to push back. She increased the depth on her ground strokes, attempted to disrupt rhythm, and fought for every point. But every surge was met with an answer. A blistering down-the-line winner. A perfectly disguised drop shot. A serve that clipped the line and froze her opponent in place. It was controlled aggression, the kind that signals maturity beyond age. Ella closed the match 6-3, 6-2, sealing her first career win over a player who had previously blocked her path. In her immediate post-match interview, before controversy hijacked the headlines, Ella was calm and reflective. She spoke about growth, about learning from past losses, and about the satisfaction of seeing her work translate into results. She acknowledged the significance of the win and emphasized that it represented progress rather than a final destination. It was the kind of grounded response fans hoped to hear from a rising star. But the day wasn't over. After the emotional high of her singles victory, Ella had to reset quickly for doubles competition. She returned to the court alongside her partner, facing an experienced duo with deep chemistry. Earlier in the tournament, Ella had already proven her versatility, contributing to a high-profile doubles win that turned heads and raised expectations. Momentum seemed to be on her side, and another victory would have placed her in a final with a real shot at a title. Instead, the emotional toll of the day began to show. The physical demands, combined with the mental strain of sudden accusations, created a volatile mix. By the time Ella stepped into the press room later, she was carrying the weight of triumph, exhaustion, and shock all at once. That context doesn't excuse the controversy, but it explains the intensity of her reaction. What we are witnessing right now is not just a scandal, but a turning point. Ella is no longer just a promising young talent smiling her way through early tour success. She is being forced to grow up in public, under fire, with her integrity questioned on one of the biggest stages in tennis. How she responds from here could define her trajectory. The tennis world is watching Auckland with unprecedented focus. Accusations have been made. A line has been drawn. And this story is only just beginning. Stay with us, because in the next part, we're going deeper into the fallout, the reactions, and what this could mean for everyone involved. The fallout from that press room confrontation didn't stay contained within four walls. Within minutes, snippets of what had been said began circulating among journalists, then spilling onto social media, and finally exploding across the wider tennis world. Fans, former players, analysts, and even casual observers suddenly found themselves picking sides in a controversy that felt far bigger than one tournament in Auckland. The accusations leveled by Donna Vekić were being dissected word by word, while Ella's icy response and reported offer of immediate testing became the rallying cry for her supporters. What made this situation uniquely volatile was how quickly it transcended sport. This wasn't just about whether someone played better on a given day. This was about trust, ethics, and the unwritten code of respect among professionals. Many insiders noted that public accusations of this magnitude are almost unheard of without concrete proof, precisely because of the damage they can inflict. Reputations in tennis are fragile, and once doubt creeps in, it can linger for years even if nothing is ever substantiated. That reality is why so many people reacted so strongly to Vekić's comments. According to reports, officials within the tournament were blindsided. The ASB Classic had no prior complaints, no flagged irregularities, and no pending investigations involving Ella. From an administrative standpoint, The accusations seemed to come out of nowhere. That only added fuel to the fire. If there was no evidence presented privately, why make such claims publicly? Supporters of Vekić argued that veterans have a responsibility to speak up if they sense something is wrong, even if it's uncomfortable. Supporters of Ella countered that making explosive allegations without proof is reckless and potentially malicious. The tennis community fractured almost instantly. Former players weighed in on talk shows and podcasts, some praising Ella's composure under fire, others questioning whether her response was too sharp for someone so young. But even among those who felt she should have taken a calmer route, there was widespread agreement on one point. Offering voluntary, immediate testing is not the behavior of someone hiding something. That single reported gesture shifted the tone of the debate. Suddenly, the conversation wasn't, "What if?" but, "Where's the evidence?" As the hours passed, attention also turned back to the match itself, because context matters. Ella hadn't just beaten a random opponent. She had dominated a seasoned player who had previously had her number. Analysts began breaking down the footage, pointing to technical improvements rather than anything suspicious. Her serve placement, footwork, and shot selection all showed clear progression. Nothing looked unnatural. Nothing screamed artificial enhancement. Instead, it looked like the natural result of physical development, confidence, and tactical maturity. That analysis further strengthened Ella's position. Meanwhile, Vekić's camp remained largely silent. No follow-up evidence was presented. No clarification was offered. That silence became its own statement, and critics were quick to point out that doubling down without proof would only make things worse. In private conversations, some insiders suggested Vekić may have acted out of frustration, fueled by a tough loss and the emotional grind of life on tour. Tennis is brutal in that way. Careers are short, pressure is relentless, and watching a younger generation surge past you can be psychologically devastating. None of that excuses reckless accusations, but it does help explain how emotions can boil over. For Ella, the timing couldn't have been more challenging. Just as she was preparing for one of the biggest semi-final matches of her career, she was forced to answer questions about her integrity rather than her game plan. Every press interaction became a test. Every microphone was a potential trap. Yet by most accounts, she handled the aftermath with surprising poise. She reiterated her willingness to cooperate with any official procedures, emphasized her respect for clean sport, and repeatedly brought the focus back to tennis. That insistence on moving forward resonated with many fans. It painted the picture of an athlete refusing to be defined by controversy. Still, the psychological toll of such an ordeal cannot be understated. Even the strongest competitors are human. The mix of anger, disbelief, and pressure can seep into performance if not managed carefully. Observers began speculating whether the drama would fuel Ella or drain her. Some believed the injustice would sharpen her focus, turning frustration into fire. Others worried the distraction might disrupt her rhythm at a critical moment. Adding another layer to the narrative was the looming semi-final matchup itself. On paper, it was already compelling. A rising star versus an experienced Olympic medalist. Youth versus experience. Aggression versus control. Now, with scandal swirling, the stakes felt even higher. Every point would be scrutinized. Every reaction analyzed. If Ella played brilliantly, skeptics would question how. If she struggled, critics would claim the pressure exposed something. There was no neutral outcome. This is the harsh reality elite athletes face when controversy enters the picture. You are guilty in some eyes no matter what you do. That reality is why so many voices within the sport began calling for restraint. Several commentators stressed that if there were genuine concerns, they should be handled through proper channels, not aired publicly. Tennis, unlike some other sports, prides itself on decorum. When that unwritten code is broken, the damage ripples outward. Tournament officials were reportedly monitoring the situation closely, prepared to act if necessary but unwilling to speculate without facts. That cautious approach stood in stark contrast to the explosive nature of the original accusation. For many fans, the most striking aspect of the entire saga remained Ella's transformation. Not long ago, she was viewed as a polite, hard-working newcomer grateful for every opportunity. Now, she was standing in the center of a storm, refusing to back down. That shift marked a coming-of-age moment. At the highest level, talent alone is never enough. You must also defend your space, your name, and your future. Ella's willingness to do so, even imperfectly, earned her respect far beyond her fanbase. Of course, not everyone was convinced. Skeptics continued to question whether such a young player could make such rapid physical and mental gains in a short time. Those whispers, however unfair, are a reality in modern sport. What matters is how governing bodies respond, and whether evidence ever materializes. Until then, speculation remains just that. Speculation. As the tournament pressed on, one thing became clear. The ASB Classic was no longer just another stop on the calendar. It had become the epicenter of a debate that touched on fairness, generational tension, and the immense pressure placed on young athletes. For Ella, every step forward now carried added weight. For Vekić, every moment of silence intensified scrutiny. And for fans, the sport suddenly felt raw and unpredictable again. The stage was set for a semi-final that promised not just high-quality tennis, but emotional intensity rarely seen outside of finals. Whatever happened next would echo far beyond Auckland. And as the tennis world held its breath, one question hung in the air. Would the truth emerge through investigation, or would it be written in sweat and shot-making on the court? In the final part, we'll break down what's at stake moving forward, the possible consequences for both players, and why this moment could redefine an entire season. As the ASB Classic approached its decisive stages, the controversy surrounding Ella and Donna Vekić refused to fade into the background. Instead, it followed every warm-up, every camera angle, and every media interaction like a shadow. The tennis world has seen scandals before, but what made this situation so gripping was the absence of resolution. No investigation had been announced. No evidence had surfaced. Yet the damage, or at least the threat of it, was already real. For Ella, this was no longer just a test of skill. It was a test of identity. How do you perform freely when your name is suddenly attached to suspicion? How do you chase your biggest career milestone while knowing that any success might be viewed through a distorted lens? These are questions even seasoned champions struggle to answer, let alone a 20-year-old still finding her footing at the top level. The possible consequences of this moment are enormous. If the accusations quietly dissolve due to lack of proof, Vekić could face significant backlash within the sport. Publicly questioning a fellow professional's integrity without evidence is not just frowned upon, it can carry formal consequences. There is also the unspoken but very real reputational cost. Players remember who respects the code and who crosses lines when emotions run high. On the other hand, if any irregularities were somehow found, the implications for Ella would be devastating. Titles, rankings, endorsements, and trust would all be at risk. That binary outcome is what makes this story so intense. There is no soft landing here. Only vindication or ruin. This is why many within tennis have urged patience. Clean sport must be protected, but so must due process. In the meantime, Ella's focus has to remain on the court, because that is the one place she can still control the narrative. The upcoming semi-final represented more than a chance at a final. It was an opportunity to send a message through performance rather than words. A calm, composed display would suggest resilience. A fiery, aggressive showing could signal defiance. Either way, all eyes would be on her. The opponent, an experienced Olympic medalist, brought her own storyline into the match. She had navigated pressure-filled moments on the biggest stages in sport and understood exactly how quickly momentum can swing. From a tactical perspective, the matchup promised contrast. Experience versus hunger. Consistency versus explosive shot-making. For Ella, the key would be balance. Playing with intensity without letting emotion override discipline. For her opponent, the goal would be to extend rallies, test patience, and see if the weight of recent events could crack focus. Beyond the immediate match, this episode has sparked broader conversations about generational tension in tennis. As younger players rise faster and stronger than ever before, veterans face an uncomfortable reality. The sport is evolving. Training methods are improving. Athletes are peaking earlier. That transition can breed resentment if not managed carefully. While that context doesn't justify reckless accusations, it helps explain why moments like this erupt. They are pressure valves releasing years of frustration and fear. In that sense, Ella is not just fighting for herself. She represents a wave of players redefining what is possible at a young age. How the sport treats her now will send a message to every rising talent watching from afar. Fans, meanwhile, have made their voices loud and clear. Social media timelines have been flooded with support for Ella, praising her courage and condemning what many see as an unjust attack. Others have called for neutrality, reminding everyone that truth must come before judgment. That divide reflects the complexity of modern sports fandom, where loyalty, skepticism, and emotion collide in real time. What is undeniable is that interest in the ASB Classic has surged. Matches that might have drawn modest attention are now must-watch events. The drama has raised the stakes, for better or worse. For Ella, the path forward will require not just physical recovery but emotional management. Surrounding herself with trusted voices, sticking to routine, and narrowing focus will be crucial. Many great players have spoken about the importance of controlling what you can and letting go of what you cannot. This is one of those moments where that advice becomes survival strategy. Every practice session, every point played, becomes an act of defiance against distraction. For Vekić, the road ahead is equally uncertain. Silence may protect her legally, but it does little to repair perception. At some point, clarity will be required, whether that comes in the form of evidence, retraction, or apology. The longer ambiguity lingers, the more it erodes trust. Tennis thrives on respect between competitors. When that bond fractures, everyone feels the impact. Looking beyond Auckland, the implications stretch into the rest of the season. Rankings, seedings, and opportunities are shaped by moments like this. A deep run here could catapult Ella into a new tier, opening doors to bigger tournaments and brighter spotlights. With that elevation comes increased scrutiny. This episode may be the first of many tests she will face as her profile grows. Learning how to navigate controversy is, unfortunately, part of becoming a star. History is filled with champions who were doubted, questioned, and even accused before proving themselves beyond dispute. Whether Ella joins that list remains to be seen, but her response so far suggests she understands what is at stake. As the semi-final looms, the tennis world waits. Not just for a winner, but for a signal. A sign that sport can still rise above suspicion, or a reminder of how fragile trust can be. The outcome of one match will not resolve everything, but it will shape the narrative moving forward. A composed victory would strengthen Ella's case in the court of public opinion. A loss, while disappointing, would not erase the questions already raised. That is the unfairness of this situation. The burden placed on her is heavier than it should be. Yet this is the reality she must confront. Tennis, at its core, is a solitary battle. No teammates to hide behind. No timeouts to escape the moment. Just you, the opponent, and the truth of your preparation. In Auckland, that truth will be tested under a microscope. And regardless of how this chapter ends, one thing is certain. Ella has crossed an invisible line. She is no longer just a promising name on a draw sheet. She is a central figure in one of the most talked about moments of the season. How she emerges from this will shape not only her career, but how the sport views its next generation. Stay tuned, stay engaged, and stay subscribed, because this story doesn't end with a final handshake. It's only the beginning.